Hello, you're welcome to another amazing episode in our HTML and CSS series today on this our channel, YouTube channel, Prince Will Tech Mastery. Today we're going to be looking deeper into HTML as a programming language. We're going to be looking at HTML5 and all the various features, so many features that HTML5 comes with to make your programming life easier. And we're going to be touching a bit of JavaScript and a couple of other things. Honestly, you do not want to miss any part of this class. This class is not just one single long video that you have to keep play till the end. This class is split into multiple videos, so if you practice to a point and you get tired, you are simply allowed to just you are allowed to simply just stop the video, come back and continue from the next one. Honestly, be a part of this class and you won't regret it. I remain your formidable host, Okolo Baby Prince, the senior ICT instructor. Enjoy. I will do everything possible to make our classes today as brief as possible. Okay, so the first one I'm going to be looking at is HTML5 layout, forms, and elements. Now, what is layout? Whenever you hear the word layout, we're talking about whenever we mention the word layout, what we're talking about is we're talking about how something is planned, how something looks like on a page. Now, HTML as a programming language, when it came out really, all the previous versions of HTML never really cared or bothered about anything layout. They never really cared about that. Layout was not really that important to HTML then. It was all about transmitting text through the internet and images where possible. But now, with the help of HTML5, layout has become a source of concern to HTML, and that is why certain elements were introduced known as semantic element. What is a semantic element? A semantic element can be defined as an element that clearly explains what it does to the computer, to the web, and to you as the developer. This is exactly what a semantic element does. It clearly explains what it does in clear language to anybody reading the code as to what it is. Now, what are some of these semantic elements? Now, initially, HTML did not make use of semantic elements. It only made use of generic tags like div, h1, etc. That was what HTML usually made use of. But now it is no more like that. HTML makes use of semantic elements. Now, what the first semantic element is the header. This defines the top container for introductory content on navigation links. That is the job of the header. The header is the first part of every website. As you can see, this is an example of the header. You can see it gives you a straight information as to what this website does. This is the header. The name of the organization is like an ID card that introduces a website to your users. And it also contains the navigation links. The nav is also another semantic tag that contains the navigation links. What a navigation links is like the director or the usher. These are navigation links that carry you from one place to another in a website. Then the main contains every other important content that is on that particular web page. This is the main content. Everything outside the header and the navigation and nav are all under main. Everything here are all under main. Each and every one of these things are under what? Main. Yes, perfect. So main is like the box that carries every other thing that makes up that particular website. That is exactly what main does. It carries in every other thing that makes up that website is under main. So as soon as you finish with the header, you finish with the navigation bar, the next element that you are supposed to go to naturally is the main, to open up a box whereby all the other elements can now fit into. And then we now have article tag. What is article tag? Article now refers to specific content inside the main. Every specific content inside the main. This is an article. This slider is an article. This is an article, this is an article, this is an article. That's why we say here that the article represents self-contained reusable content, e.g. blog post, news story, hero image. Article is just referring to all those is referring to the different contents that are inside the main. So the article is meant to be inside the main. Then the section represents to stand-alone semantic section of the document. There may be certain part of a document that you want to, a certain part of a document that stand out, okay? Yes, certain part of the document that stand out, like all of these are examples of what? Of sections. When you click here, this is an example of a section. This is a very perfect example of a section. This is a section. Who are we? It tells you about everything about this company. You scroll down, another section that you have here is our mission, our vision. All of these are all part of what section. So it represents a standalone thematic section of a HTML document. And the next thing we have is the aside. What is aside? This defines content tangentially related to main content. Yes, it refers to sidebars, ads, anything that is not fully a part of the content that is being projected on the site at that moment, or just by the corner, probably to buttress information on the main content, or otherwise is referred to as aside. Then the footer. Aside is usually found at the left and right hand side. Of course, this website is a corporate website. They don't really involve themselves in all of that. But if you go to other websites like news websites, most of the news websites, you will find out that on the left and right hand side, a very good example. Let me enter the site, Linda Ikeji's blog. Yeah, lindaikejisblog.com. Let's go to Linda Ikeji. Yeah, if you come here, you can see this is an example of aside. All of these contents here, they are not part of the main content of the website. They are not part of the main content. You can see them. They are all adverts. These things you see here, they are all what? Adverts. So they are not part of the main website, but they are just by the side. You can see this also by the side. Yes. And then we have the footer. So when you have the aside is meant to be inside the section. You may have certain parts of your application. There will be certain parts of your application. Okay. There may be certain parts of your application. There may be certain parts of your application in their side. Okay, there may be certain parts of your application in their side that you may need to reference to in aside. Those are what we refer to as the aside. Those are other contents that are part of the web page but are not really a part of the main content. Okay, then we'll go to navigation bars and division. Navigation bar used exclusively to wrap key navigation lists. So of course the navigation bar is just like we treated before. The job of navigation bar is to direct users on how to go around a specific website. Like in this website that I open now, in the navigation bar you can find they have used a lot of adverts to you can find a lot of things. You can see, okay, they don't even have a navigation bar. You see, this is one of the problem why websites don't stand the test of time. But this is a navigation. So a navigation bar actually shows the user where to go to. This is a navigation. These are all navigation bar. They just show a user where they are to go to on a particular website. Divisions and nav is a semantic tag because it already describes clearly what it does. Yes, a nav bar already describes clearly what it does. So that's what it is. So then now, if the divisions are generic tags, they don't describe what they are used for. You have to describe them using the use of IDs and classes before you can make use of division tags. So nav is better than division. So always use HTML5 semantic tags because one of the reasons to use them is that number one, they make your code easily readable. Yes, HTML5 semantic tag make your code easily readable. Apart from making your code easily readable, they also help your code they also help your website to be search engine friendly. Search engines will find it easier to lay out and structure and rank a website that makes use of semantic tag because automatically they don't need to go through extra work. Your tags already describe every information that you have passed at a particular point in that your particular website. And then we now have also what we call accessibility. You use semantic tags in HTML because of accessibility. So that people that are using screen readers are special devices that are built for visually impaired people to be able to access the internet or to be able to teach them. So always use semantic tags. It makes it easier for screen readers to be able to render your website to visually impaired people. And for a website to be accessible, it must be okay on mobile and be able to be used by every kind of person, no matter their disability. Now, HTML5 modernized form controls. Now, initially, HTML had only few form controls. What are form controls? Now, for a programming language to exist as a programming language, it must be able to communicate with the end user. It must be able to accept input from the end user, process it, and give an output, which we already know that this is a major. This is why what we define the computer as an electronic device that accepts input from the end user, processes it, and gives what? An output. And gives an output. That's what we know it as. So now, HTML5 input types. We have various input types in HTML5. We have various input types that HTML5 introduced that were not existing before. We have the input type equal to email. Input type equal to email, this is used for a particular This is used for accepting email entries, like when you want to accept the email address of a user on your website. Input type equal to URL when you want to accept the link, a website link into your website submitted via a form. Okay, that's where you use the URL. The TEL is for telephone when you want to accept a telephone number from the end user. This also works hand in hand with the pattern attributes. The pattern attributes will allow you to specify how the number is meant to come to you and how your server-side code is going to handle it. Then we have input type equal to number. Input type equal to number is used to accept numerical input. HTML never had support for accepting numerical input in forms before HTML5. But with input type equal to number, you can accept number inputs from the end user, like age, like quantity, all of those things. These are numeric what inputs. Initially, if you wanted to do that, you have to make use of jQuery, JavaScript, and all of that to accept numerical input. Then we have range. Range is also used for accepting numerical input, but numerical input that starts from a particular number to a particular number. So range is also an input, but we don't often use it. We have dates. Now you can also accept date with the help of HTML5. Input type equal to date. This is used to accept the date. When you click on the date, it brings out a calendar for the end user to pick a date. Then we have time. You can also accept time in HTML5. We have color. You can also accept color. When you put input type equal to color, automatically it brings out the color, the color charts of the computer system, and the user can choose the color that they want. This might be useful in certain specific applications, like when you want to offer personalized experiences to your end user, you can make use of that. Then we have the search. The search is also like a text input, but it allows you to when you combine it with JavaScript, you understand the power of input type equal to search. Then we now have attributes. What are attributes? Attributes can be defined as rules and regulations, as extra features that you use to add special features to a particular HTML form field. So what are the HTML5 form attributes that were introduced? Placeholder. This displays the form and this displays hint text inside the control. This is an example. Okay, let me refresh this page. You see this John Doe that you see here, John at example.com, type or select, and all of these. These are all examples of what? Placeholder. Displays hint text inside the control. This is usually very useful on mobile devices. Of course, when you have the label, you can have the label tell the user what to enter and have the placeholder tell the user the file format through which they are meant to enter that particular, provide you with that particular data or information. Then we have the required field. This enforces the mandatory input of a field. If you have a field in your form that must be filled before it can be submitted, you use the required attribute. The required attribute makes this what? Possible. Autofocus automatically focuses elements on page load. Like now, as you can see, as soon as this page is loaded, let me refresh this page. Automatically, it focuses me on the first field. You can see my cursor is already blinking on that very field. This is exactly what we do. This is exactly what autofocus does. Then we have the pattern. Pattern specifies the rigorous pattern for an input validation. Especially when you're dealing with phone numbers. Phone numbers are not the same all across the world. So when you want to handle phone numbers in a certain geopolitical zone or area, you must provide a pattern through which the user is meant to provide these numbers to you. If it's a worldwide platform, you can also provide a safe format through which the numbers can actually be provided to you. Then we now have the min, max, and step. These are used for restricting numerical or date ranges. Or you can use min to limit the number of characters that can be entered in a text field, or the lowest number that can be entered in a number field. Use max to enter the maximum number of characters that can be entered in a text field, or the maximum number that can be selected that can be entered in a numerical field. And use step to show how a number can increase from 1 to 2. You can even use decimals when you are using step. Then autocomplete toggles the browser autofill, so allows the browser to automatically fill. If your user had already filled a previous form like that, if your autocomplete is on, if the user puts their mouse, automatically whatever they fill on the other side is going to pop up on your form, and they can just select it instead of having to enter it all over again. Then we have what we call the data list. This provides an autocomplete drop-down option for an input. For instance, if you go to Google, for instance, now let's enter Google now. If you're searching for, are you getting me? You can see Google is popping up a lot of things for you. Are you getting me? That is what the data list is used for. So if you want to provide this kind of thing to your users, allow your users to be able to provide to be able to pop up suggestions for your users when they are typing a particular text box in your form, you can make use of the data list. Without the help of any scripting, you will successfully be able to get it to work. The output is used to display calculation or script output. Like when a script executes at the back end or JavaScript code that you want to send to the end user, you use the output tag for that. Then the progress, when you want to upload, or many websites, when you want to upload a picture or something, they will show you a progress bar as to how that picture is moving, till it gets to the final end. And then we have input type equal to hidden. Hidden fields are stored data needed by server scripts that users do not need to see. These used to store data that you don't want the user to see. These are usually data that are automatically generated by you for the end user. The end user does not feel all of this by themselves and they can't edit it either. So this is our classwork. This is where I'm rushing to exactly into this class so I can explain practically what we mean. So now, of course, if you have your XAMPP already installed, you should have this folder. You should be able to open, if you open C, you should have this folder over here called XAMPP. Okay. Okay. And inside htdocs, I created this folder called class3 for today's class, and I created my CSS folder. I have my CSS folder, I have my JS folder, and I have my IMGs folder. Then I created a file called index.html to hold my HTML file, and I created a style.css in my CSS folder. If you open my CSS folder, I created style.css. Like I taught us in the last class, I say that external style sheets are always recommended for you to be able to build websites. Don't use inline styles. Inline styles will stress you. Don't use on-page styles, except it's a one-page website. But even for a one-page website, we still recommend that you make use of. We also recommend that you make use of you make use of external style sheets. Okay, let's proceed. Now, this is our HTML. If you open the manual is usually attached to all of these classes. If you click here, if you open it, you will see it. You have to first create a file called style.css, save it inside. You have to save this file inside your CSS folder. You can see where I saved it. If you look closely up here, you will see I saved it in css/style.css. And then index.html, you have to do the same thing here. Okay, so here the first thing here is doc type HTML. This, like I told us in our introduction to HTML, that this is an introduction to the browser, that this is a HTML document you want to process. This second one is HTML. This one is telling the browser that this document will be in the English language. This is the head section. We have meta class equal to UTF-8. This is telling the browser that we are going to be using the UTF-8 character encoding to be able to code these documents. And I told us that the most important tag that is in your head section is this, because this is what that makes your website to be optimized for mobile. No matter how you do your CSS, you do your JavaScript, whatever you do, if you don't have this particular meta tag inside your document, that website will not be properly optimized for mobile. So you can take note of that. So this is the most important thing in your head document. Then you have title. The title, I told us already, I said the title is like this now. What you see in this title bar, that's the title. Yes, that is what is appearing in this title. Then you have link arrow here equal to what? Style sheet. Now href is equal to css/style.css. This is where I linked my style sheet that I'm using to style this particular document. And of course, I close my head section. Then you open the body section. I told us that the body section is where the real things on your website show. And as we're talking about semantic tag, the first thing I have is what? The header. When you open the header, and inside the header, I have the h1 tag. You can see that I have the h1 tag here inside the header, and I put a topic there. This is the document here. You can see where it is appearing. Let's go up. Tech Academy what? Portal. That's where it's appearing. Okay, so you have that, and then I have the nav. I told us after the header comes the nav. Inside the nav, I have links to the various pages of this site. Of course, this is a dummy site that doesn't have pages really, but we'll just use this to show a sign of demonstration. You can see these are those. This is what the nav can give us. Of course, you have to understand all of these things is working because of CSS, but our focus in today's class is not on CSS. Our focus is on HTML. so you can get better in it and fully understand it. Then immediately after the header and nav, you open the main tag. Okay, I told us we already know that the main tag contains the main component. That is the section. It contains all the major real components and content of your website. Now the first thing I have here is a heading for my form. That's a H2 heading, and I centralized it. You can use this is the center tag in HTML used to centralize elements. So if you come here, you can see it registration form. You can see it in my browser. Then you come here and say form action equal to /submit. This /submit is referring to where this form is going to be processed. Okay, the server side script that is going to process this very form. That is what action attributes carry. And method equal to post is trying to tell the browser that it should use the post method to submit this form. The post method there are two methods you can use to submit forms in HTML to server side code. Either you use the post method or the guest method. The major difference between both methods is that the post method does not expose what the user entered on the address field, but the get method exposes everything entered by the user in plain text in the address field, which can lead to certain security vulnerabilities and social engineering attack, which is why we don't encourage, I encourage my students, I say always use the post method for whatever kind of form that you are submitting. Now we now have the next one, input type equal to what? Now the first input I have is input type equal to hidden, name equal to form underscore. This name attribute, this type equal to hidden. Type is an attribute telling the form field what kind of input that will be accepted, that it needs to accept, and the input it can accept here is hidden, so the end user does not enter it. And then the name, this is what the server side script here is going to use to access the value in this particular form field. Why the value? Of course, if it's a hidden form field and you are going to make use of it, you are the one to place the value because the end user cannot see it and the end user cannot fill that particular form. So you must take note of that. So you are the one to put the value there. We usually use this for certain kind of manipulations at the back end when the form is submitted. Probably want to generate a tracking ID or want to generate an insertion ID, want to generate something and just keep to be able to remember the trace this particular form in our database or whatever we are doing at the back end. That is when we make use of the hidden input field. Then when you come down further, I created div class equal to form group. If you see my CSS here, I have styled the form group. I have margin bottom 15 pixel. This is the only thing that I styled it with. And the label, I gave the label some styling. I gave the input some styling, all of that. Yes, so I gave it all of those styling. So when you come here, you now say we have input type equal to what? Text ID. I've already taught us about IDs. Or label is actually displaying to the end user what they should enter there, what you are expecting there. Like here, this is the label, full name, and then when that is the label, it appears before the input field. And then you say input type equal to text. When you say text, it means you want to accept plain text on that particular input field, because that's how HTML form inputs work. When you say input type, this is probably the oldest particular type of input that HTML has ever supported right from time, and that is input type equal to text. So it means you want to accept plain text. I already taught us about what an ID is in the last class, so go back to those videos and check. And the name, like I said, is used to refer. You use the name to refer to whatever it is. You use the name to refer to what you sent. The name is used by the server side code to refer to this particular field. The name attribute is used to refer to this particular form field in the server side code. Then the placeholder, normally what we do is that we use the label to tell the user what to enter and use the placeholder to tell the user the format in which we expect it. You can see here we have John Doe. This is the placeholder. Automatically, any user that sees it knows that okay, they expect me to type my first name, give a space, and type my last name or my middle name. So this is exactly how it works here. And then when you do that, you have the required attribute. Now the required attribute ensures that the form cannot be submitted without the help, without any. You see, when I try to submit the form without filling this, it tells me please fill out this field, because why? It is a required field. Only required fields can prevent a form from being submitted. And then we now have the autofocus. Now the autofocus, you can see here, like I told us, if you refresh this page now, automatically you are coming, you will see that this page is already blinking. You use the autofocus to draw a user's attention, usually to the first field in your form, so that they can fill it. That's actually what we usually use it for. Of course, now we now go further to some real HTML5 input types. We have input type equal to email. Input type equal to email. This is if when you want to accept an email address from the end user. Any field that you say type equal to email, we only accept email addresses from the end user. And then ID, we know what an ID is. The name, like I said, is what the server-side code is going to use to refer to this very field in its own code and be able to validate and manipulate this field and access the value entered in this very field. And then you now have placeholder. Placeholder equal to in here I have been able to tell the user this is how I expect my email to be. Now, if you try to enter an email address that doesn't follow the standard format of an email, because of that input type equal to email, the form is going to reject and tell the user that they need to enter a valid input. And of course, we have our required attribute because that field is a required field. Okay. Now we scroll down further, we have this. Now this data list work at work. Now you can see here, if I come here now, let's say I just type, if I type F now, you can see front end web development appears, all these things. These things is as a result of what? Data list. Yes. The job of data list is when you want to populate a form field, and this is how we link it. You see, input list. You see, we're not using type here again. Whenever you want to make use of data list, you use the list attribute. You say list equal to what? Courses. ID equal to course. Every other thing basically remains the same, just the name and placeholder. It all remains the same. Every other thing actually just remains the same. How does the data list know? The ID of the data list, you can see here, must match the list that you created. This name must be created by you. List equal to whatever you choose. You can say list equal to Prince, list equals to you, list equal to anything, list equal to chores, list equal to hobbies, whatever it is you want to choose, you can choose. But this list equal to courses here is what I choose because of what I'm working on. Then data list ID equal to courses. With this ID equal to courses that we created, automatically this data list knows that it belongs to this particular list. And this is important because of the fact that you can have more than one list, more than one data list in a single form that is populating different parts of that same form. And if you have more than one data list in a single form, it has to populate different parts of that form. And as such, since it has to populate all different parts of that form, you must be able to link each one properly to the right data list. And that is why HTML5 has made it easy. Once the ID matches the list attributes here, automatically that is going to be known. That will be the data list for that field. And of course, we have the input type equal to date. When you click the input type equal to date, you find out that a calendar comes out, and you can choose the dates in particular that you want to select for this calendar. A calendar comes out, you can see okay, you select that, and of course you register. Now you see, take note of something. Okay, John Doe, you can see something that happened because I didn't fill this field, because this field was not filled. Okay, because this field was not properly filled, that is why we're having this error. Now let me remove the at here. Okay, and just try to submit it like this. You can see, please include an at in the email address. Without any JavaScript, it already knows that the email I entered is not what? Valid. So we add the at, and automatically the error disappears. Now when we register, take a look at this. You see submit, how it happened here. Now let us look at what will happen if we use the get protocol. Now let's say we use the get now on the form. If we are using the get on the form now, so that you can understand what I'm trying to explain to us. If I use get on the form, and please, you must know that get and post must be capital letter all through. Yeah, must be capital letter all through. That's the only way your backend scripts can know it. Now, if I refresh now, let's just say I take anything that was used before to fill it. I can just pick today, okay, today, and then say register now. Now you can see that over here, everything that we entered in the form is appearing in our browser's address bar. And you see, this is not good at all. This can lead to security. Even if a password was entered on this form, it will also reveal in plain text on this address bar. And this is the reason why we do not make use of it. This is the reason why we always encourage people, for everything you are doing, always use the get, the post what method, because why? The post method guarantees security and guarantees protection for your end user whenever they are making use of your website. So we can change this back to post, and you see when we change it back to post, automatically those things will not appear in the address bar. In fact, one of the major limitations of using the get is that when you use the get method, browsers always limit the number of characters that can be contained in their address bar. Now, most browsers usually limit at 250 characters. Now, imagine you have a bulky form and you use the get method. You know very well you're going to exceed that 250 characters, especially paginated forms. So, because of that, we do not use it at all. Right now, if we do it like this, even if I say today, you say register now, you can see all those things we entered on show the address bar. At least we protect ourselves from security risk, etc. with this particular pattern. Are we together? Yeah. Take note of that. Now, that brings us to the end of this first section of today's class. I want to encourage you, please try to practicalize the classwork very, very well. Try to practicalize this first classwork. We're going to be entering the second class shortly, but try to practicalize this classwork and use it to help yourself. Are you getting me? Use it to practice more. Visit website like w3schools.com. Also read our manuals. We always try our best on this channel to provide manuals and materials for every single tutorial that we teach out there, or every single thing that we teach out there. We always try to provide a manual. So I encourage you, try to follow up with our manuals, follow up with our videos. And if you're not yet subscribed on our channel, we encourage you to please subscribe on our channel. And I know very well that if you do that, you're not going to regret it. Have a lovely day. See you in the next section.